And we're live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very cool second day of winter here in Sydney. And we have some nice little lights in the background just to give it a little bit of atmosphere. We're going to go through a lot of stats on the weekend. We had a very successful, hopefully you all followed me. We had a very successful anytime try scorer with parlays and standouts and some nice value there over the weekend. Started off a little bit slow, but we'll go through those game by game. Now, the first game, and these are really important stats that we'll be going over. We have the NRL.com website that will give us, I'll just make sure that microphone's a little bit closer, that will give us all the vital statistics that helped your side win or maybe was the downfall of your side. So the first game was at Cogra Jubilee, just not too far down the road in the St George area there at Carlton. A lot of people catch the train and start off at the pub. Don't blame them, or they might start off at the Legs Club and then walk across the road to Cogra Jubilee. What do they call it now? Oakey Jubilee Stadium. Or it used to be Oakey. Maybe they've lost the sponsorship. But it was 20-6 over the hapless Knights, which are now 15th and going backwards. And it was St George 20-6. And let's have a look at the stats. Jaden Sewell went over. So as our banker, we had Clint Gutherson. That was good. We didn't get the replacement reserve Pacifica Tonga. He would have been really good odds. And Fletcher Sharp and also Dylan Lucas let us down for our second and third leg, but at least we got the one with very good value at Jaden Sewell at $3.75 into Clint Gutherson, who is 5-2. So that's a pretty good double that at least got our money back for game one. But let's look at the team stats here. Possession rate was 53%. St George held the ball, and that's as expected at their home ground. And they're slowly getting their act together, St George. This was their second win in a row. The completion rate was 77% to St George and only 70% to Newcastle. Time in possession, 31 minutes for St George and only 27 for Newcastle. They had their chances, but their attack is so lackluster, and the stats will tell you exactly how lackluster they were. So let's have a look here. The all runs meters, they run rings around them. St George 1954 to Newcastle's 1586. Post contact meters 689 to 495. Newcastle way much more ground against their defence. Horrendous. Line breaks here were 4-2 to St George. And here comes the stats that really tell the tale here. Tackle breaks 39 to St George and only 18 to Newcastle. The average set distance was 43 metres for St George and only 39 metres for Newcastle. Kick returns 185 metres. That's the stats are there. Listen to this: 108 Newcastle. Average play the ball. Well, as far as we're concerned, it's always very, very similar. 356 and 338. So we won't carry on over that. Total passes, they were throwing it around like a hotcake. St George 288 and only 255. No creativity from the Knights. Admittedly, they lost Kalen Palmer, who was announced by the NRL that he was going to play. He did not play. Forced dropouts, 4 to St George, interesting, and 1 to Newcastle. The defence, effective tackles, here we go, 412 for Newcastle and 389 tackles made for St George. So that's going to really gas you there. But the missed tackles are the telltale here. 39 missed tackles to Newcastle and 18 to St George. Intercepts 1 to Newcastle, none to St George. Ineffective tackles. Here's another classic. 20 ineffective tackles from Newcastle, and which really freed up St George's attack, and only 13 ineffective tackles for St George. Errors were 16 errors to 13. Well, I'm getting used to that as a Knights fan. Penalties conceded, disgraceful. 9 from Newcastle, only 5 for St George. Ruck infringements, 2 and 1 to Newcastle, and really the rest. Only 7 interchanges used for St George and 8 from Newcastle. So really, I don't know what it is for Newcastle next. Do they get rid of Adam O'Brien? What do you guys think? I think he's skating on thin ice. I really do. Let's get over to the next match, but congratulations, St George. Hopefully they can keep on going with that momentum, and they can get a couple of players that were missing from that side back. I think they had a few players out as far as I know. But anyway, and Gutho is just playing out of his skin. He always tends to give 100% in every, whether it was for Parramatta when Parramatta were gone or shot ducks, he'd always be trying his heart out. You've got to give it to the Gutho, and probably St George's best buy. Okay, let's go on to the next match. This match on Saturday, the early one, it was a quagmire. If anyone had the displeasure of looking at it, there's going to be a lot of stats here. For 16 for the Titans, 28. It was a very, very, very sloppy, choppy game. 28 to the Storm. It was at the Gold Coast, and had I known that it was raining, it was my fault for not doing my homework. I would have halved my bets, because some try scorers went over that I really didn't even bring into calculations. So this was not a good result for us, as it was, especially with Jaden Campbell. We did have Philip Sami in our combinations with Grant Anderson, but there was a player or two that was missing from our original selections, and it threw me under the bus. And Tyron Wishart came on and scored, and we've had him many times before. But Jaden Campbell, I must have had him with AJ Brimson. That was one that didn't play AJ Brimson. He was in our selections, and so I had to. It sort of really threw me. But the thing that killed me is my tips tend to, for some reason, get really spoiled by heavy conditions. And anyway, it was Fa'alago going over twice. He was no value. Grant Anderson was very skinny in the market as well, and two tries to both of them. So whether you could have taken them scoring 2 tries, who knows? It was a very, very disappointing match, and had it been a dry pitch, I think Melbourne would have won by a lot more, and our try scorers would have shone. But let's go and have a look at the team stats, because that's one that's really going to pick this game apart. Storm, excuse me. Time and possession, pretty much similar, 28 minutes for the Storm and 27.5 for Gold Coast. But completion rate, 87% for Storm. That's really a big stat here, and only 66% to Gold Coast. It was a very clunky game, and a couple of refereeing decisions that were less than par or substandard. No, it was substandard. All runs meters were a little bit more to the Storm. They couldn't play their usual free-flowing game, and I think by memory, Harry Grant didn't even get the run here because he was pretty cut up after the state of origin. So that was another reason why our tips did not go too well, and we had to mix and match them. The tackle breaks 24 to the Storm, 20 to Gold Coast. It looked like Gold Coast were coming back into it for a bit, but it was not a pretty game. It was a very ugly win for Storm, but they would have been happy getting the 2 points in any case. Tackle breaks 24 to the Storm, only 20 to Gold Coast. Average set distance 44 metres for the Storm and only 36 to the Gold Coast. Kick return metres, fairly similar. Now let's have a look at the offloads. 11 are trying to throw it around Gold Coast, but with the wet ball and torrential rain, it didn't suit either team. Only 9 offloads for Melbourne. Total passes 225 to Melbourne and 236 to Gold Coast. Receipts were fairly high considering the conditions. Just having a look here, anything else here? Here we go, the defence. Tackles made, 363. Gold Coast, only 330 needed for the Storm. Missed tackles, 24 to Gold Coast and 20 to Melbourne. Intercepts 2 to Melbourne, 0 for Gold Coast. Ineffective tackles, surprisingly, Storm with 24. They need to clear that up before they meet someone of a higher significance, a team that's higher up than Gold Coast. 13 ineffective tackles. So surprising, that's a strange stat. It's going more towards Gold Coast being more effective. Negative plays, 15 for the Gold Coast and only 6 negative players and errors from the Storm. Penalties conceded, surprisingly 8 from Melbourne and only 5 from the Titans. Both interchanges used 7 each. There's a few players on report here. Ruck infringements 3 for Storm. Well, that's nothing new there. But overall, I was disappointed with that match, and we sort of got blown away because we had a few cross combinations. And once some players played and other players didn't, that really threw the game and our selections into the bin. Let's get on to the next one. Onwards and upwards. Desi Hasler's still got massive issues, as much as the O'Brien with the Knights and the West Tigers team, which we'll get to very shortly because it's the next match. We did pretty well here with the anytime try scorer. Hopefully followed up here. It was Gold Coast. Well, we've already gone over them. It was the Cowboys 32. And I'll tell you what, it was an entertaining match. You'll see with the stats that the ball was thrown around with no caution to the wind and 2 attacking sides, and they didn't really care too much for defence. It was just all about who could score the most amount of tries. It was 32 to 28 at full time. John Bateman went over, Jackson Purdue, that killed us because we had him in the week before and he got us all the parlays over the last 2 months. We left him out. We stood out Scott Drinkwater and he went over in the 39th minute. Jeremiah Nanai, my goodness, he was one of my bankers for the state of origin. I didn't even know he was going to get a run, so that hurt me. But Tom Dearden went over in the 57th minute, and that was a beautiful, beautiful parlay for us because we also had the 3-legged parlay into Stafford Tower. Thank you, Stafford Tower. Now, the one I was tossing up between was trying in Jareem Buller. He went over in the 75th minute, so that's another one we could have had. But you can't put them all in. You can only have, otherwise it's going to cost you too much money. But we did really well there with the try scorers. And I just knew in my mind it was time for Scott Drinkwater to go over, and he did. And he's been playing outstanding lately. So let's get on to the team stats info, which is very important. Completion rate, 82% for the Cowboys. The Tigers, 78%. So not as much. This all-runs meters pretty much the same there. Post-contact meters, fairly much the same. Line breaks, 8 each. So that was that even. There was only, 4 points in it at the end. And Tigers were storming home. Cowboys got out to such a good lead, and they wouldn't have made the coach very happy. Todd Payton would not have been happy the way that game finished for the Cowboys. They hung on just by the skin of their teeth. Tackle breaks, 43. These stats are very, very similar. 43 to Tigers, 40 to the Cowboys. Average set distance, 47 for the Tigers, 51, a little bit more there for the Cowboys. Kick return meters, 159, 148, fairly similar. Average play the ball speed, we don't need to know that. That's the referee's decision. 8 and 17 offloads. 17 offloads, that's when they were throwing the ball around. You know what? And when West Tigers do that, 17 offloads to 8 over the Cowboys. But that's when they started to look extremely dangerous. Just keeping the hot cake alive. So the receipts, a lot more catching there from the West Tigers. Total passes, a lot more, about another 40 passes more from the Tigers. Dummy passes, this is interesting, 33 dummy passes from the Cowboys and only 9 for Tigers. Learn to dummy more, Tigers. Okay, the kicks were fairly even, 19-18. Forced dropouts, 1. Let's have a look here. Grubbers, 4-3 to the Cowboys. Bombs, 10-5. Well, they've obviously put a lot of pressure on the Tigers there with their bombs. The Cowboys. Tackles made, fairly similar, but surprisingly, Tigers had to do a lot more tackling, 331 to 318. Effective tackles, 86% to the Tigers and 82% to the Cowboys. Missed tackles, 43, surprisingly, to the Cowboys and only 40 from the Tigers. 1 intercept to the Cowboys. Ineffective tackles, surprisingly, 28 to the Cowboys and only 15 from the Tigers. Errors, 12 errors to 10 in a negative play. Penalties were 3 each. It was fairly even. Rucker infringements, fairly even. And on reports, there was 2 players that were on report, and both sides used the interchange with 8 and 8. Let's get on to the next match. Congratulations, Cowboys. It was a game you nearly threw. You nearly lost. So it was a lot better effort from the Cowboys compared to the week before where they got whacked by Manly. But speaking of Manly whacking someone, Broncos, what happened, Scotty? SPM McLeod? That was hard to watch. We had Ezra Mann as our main banker as well, and he went over in the 12th minute. Fololo for Manly went over in the 5th and the 21st. Nathan Brown, well, I wouldn't have had him if you put a gun to my head. 26th minute. It was a bit of a fluky try from a bomb, and someone passed it to him as a last-minute resort. Hamoli Olakawate scored one of those as well. Scored 2 of them, one in the 38th minute and one in the 70th minute. But our saviour that got our money back was Tolatau Kola. As you know, he was our 3rd or 4th combination there with Ezra Mann as the banker. But because we had a few players like Shibasaki, and we had another player for the Broncos, and we tipped Broncos. They just didn't show up. And I cannot tip Broncos again with any confidence. I don't care who's missing from the side, whether it's Reece Walsh or anyone else. Payne Haas, I felt so sorry for him because he played his balls out in the State of Origin and was the man of the match, and he backed it up. Had he not done a couple of try-saving incidences that happened, that could have been a lot worse than 34-6 at the old Brookie, 4 Pines Park. Ruben Garrick was fairly good with the boot, 5 out of 6. Reynolds didn't get to kick much. It was yes, they're missing one of their other halves there from injury, but honestly, I was very disappointed with them. Let's have a look at the stats because that's going to tell a tale here in this game. Completion rates: Broncos 75% and 88% for Manly. They just brought their right game, and as Scotty was saying to the boys on our chat, on our NRL chat, was that DCA had a shocking game in the Origin, but kept it going for Manly, and everything went well because of DCA having such an amazing input into the game. Time in possession, Manly held the ball a lot more, so it was 35 minutes to 25 minutes for Broncos. If you can't hold the ball, very hard to score when you got 42% possession against 58 for Manly. So there you go. All runs meters, they ran rings around them, another 400 metres there for Manly. Line break 6 for Manly against line breaks 2 for Broncos. Tackle breaks 24 for Broncos, about the same. 22, a little bit less for Manly. So average set distance, they made good ground with their sets. A little bit more than Manly, 39 metres there for the Broncos. Kick return metres, 262, 197, but they were solid in their defence, Manly, and only let in that one try. We don't need to know about the average play the ball speed. It's really got nothing much to do with us here. Total passes, 209. Broncos, they weren't very adventurous. 310, that's nearly 100 more total passes for Manly. The dummy passes fairly similar. Kicks, big kicking game from Evans, 35 over only 23. Wow, these stats are leaning so much towards what happened on the scoreboard. 40-20s, and there was one for it was DC, I would imagine. The Bombs 6-4 to Broncos. Grubbers 10, which caused a lot of damage. 10 for Manly, only 4. Very unadventurous from Broncos, as we said before. Effective tackles 93%. 90% to Eagles, 93% to the Broncos. Missed tackles 22, 24. So 24 to Manly, 22 to Broncos. Intercepts 1 to Manly. Ineffective tackles 10, 8. So they're fairly similar in parts of the game. Penalties conceded, very ill-disciplined from Broncos, 4-3. Ruck infringements 5-1. Broncos laying all over the play the ball, and both sides used 7 interchanges each, but it was a one-act affair. Let's get on to the next match as we run through round 13 here. The last 3 matches, as I predicted to you, well, you didn't have to be Einstein, but just looking on paper, you just knew that Sunday couldn't come quick enough for us fans, because it was always going to be a classic game, these last 3 matches on Sunday. The first being Rabbitohs versus Canberra, versus Warriors, Panthers versus Eels, and the last one, which was a cracker right down to the wire. I enjoyed it because I went next door and actually watched the last 15 to 20 minutes, and it was anyone's game. Roosters had a narrow lead. it was 26-24, Canberra hanging on by a bare thread of leather. So let's go to the first one, though, and look at those stats. Rabbitohs so close, but no cigar. And Alex Johnson, congratulations, got the 200 tries. But in doing so, I think one of the guys that we had as a standout, Isaiah Tass, passed the ball to Mitchell, and then Mitchell got a quick one on to Johnson, and I was screaming, "Go yourself, Tass," because we needed him. And it cost us close to a. We had every double parlay and every triple parlay going into Isaiah Tass, but because we had so many stood out for the New Zealand Warriors, we got the rest of them. So we had a really good game here, probably for our tips with any time try scorers. We got nearly every double bar that Isaiah Tass. Unfortunately, had I not stood him out and had him, I've got to remember that if I'm tipping Warriors, which I did, and we just got up, to not have the side that you're not tipping as the main banker. But I've learned my lesson, and I apologise. But let's have a look who went over. And it was Kolomatangi. Oh, my God. Keon Kolomatangi, we've had him so many times. Alex Johnson, we got. Mitchell, we got. You could have had any of the try scorers for, because it was such an open match for New Zealand. And Luke Metcalf, I was screaming when he made that break from a drop ball down the sideline there, and everyone just let him go. And Lika Halasima came on and scored in the 47th minute. That was another double for us. Then we had Rocco Berry just putting his hand down in the 31st minute, and that started the great run of success we had here with this game. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was very skinny, and so was Zalesniak, but it was good to see them go over. I did entertain Charles Nickel-Klodstad, and the times I've had him before, he just hasn't gone over. But I think it might have even been his first try this year, possibly. Don't take my word 300% with that, but I would say that was his first one. He celebrated brilliantly. Latrell Mitchell stood up in this match, and Johnson with that intercept was an absolute killer. It was such an entertaining match, and I really thought it was going to be. I'm glad it was in Sydney and not anywhere near the bloody Gold Coast after that horrible conditions. I've been tipping Ulika Halasima, this young kid. I think he's only 19 or 20, as having a big future in the game. God bless him. The possession percentage, I'll just go, it's 50-50, but I'll go to the team stats because there might be a few things that are pointing out to us here. I would imagine, because it was such a close game, it'd be fairly much straight down the line here. Maybe nothing's going to stick out because time of possession was nearly identical, 27 and 27. Minutes of possession, as I said, 50-50. All runs meters, very similar, a little bit more to, or a lot more to the Warriors, 200, but all runs were very similar. Post-contact meters, 554. They made a lot of damage with their big forwards. The Warriors, 456 South. Line breaks 6-5 in front of Warriors. Average set distance 43. They made a lot more ground there from the start of play for the average set distance for the New Zealand Warriors. The kick return meters 225. Yeah, they dominated South there. Average play the ball. We don't need to see that. Total passes 205 to Warriors, 219 to South. Dummy passes. This is interesting. So South must have fallen for a lot. 26. They're very elusive, New Zealand. 26. New Zealand Warriors, 26. Only five to South. Mix it up, guys. You need to mix it up. Kicks 21 to 24, 24 being the Warriors. Kicking meters 703, 674 for South. So a lot more kicking meters there from New Zealand. Forced dropouts 2-1 to New Zealand. And let's have a look here. Grubbers 2, South only 1 for the Warriors. Bombs 8-6 in favour of South. Tackles made. This is interesting. Effective tackles 89% each, very even, and it was fairly much the same. But they did another 30 tackles, the Newcastle Warriors, and that might have been as the fatigue kicked in and South was starting to finish all over them. Missed tackles 34, surprisingly a lot more for the Warriors, and 29 to South. Intercepts 2 to Warriors, and the 1 that led to the Alex Johnson try for South. Ineffective tackles that were equal. Errors 9-7 in front of the Warriors. Penalties, bit of ill discipline sometimes with the Warriors. 4 penalties to 1 for the Warriors over South. Ruck infringements, a little bit more to the Warriors. And there we go. Interchange benches, 7 for the Warriors and 8 fully used for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. God, it was an entertaining match. Let's get on to the next match. And it was Penrith narrowly holding on by 8 points over the Eels. I think the lead changed a few times and well tipped there by Scott Pearce-McLeod. A couple of times he's tipped Parramatta, and a couple of times he's hammered Penrith. So interesting that he went with Penrith here. But I know he's a big Brian To'o fan, even though he left him out of the Origin. And, of course, he went over. And he still did get 2 anytime try scorers, Scotty, which kept him in the game because he tipped Queensland, of course. So Casey McLean here went over in the 17th minute. Thomas Jenkins in the 57th. Sean Russell went over for Parramatta. And Josh Adokar in the 45th. That was a classic try, especially if you watch it in slow motion. And which was the game breaker at the 73rd minute. Just give me 1 second. I think that aircon's starting to really dry me out here. Nathan Cleary, very good with his conversions, and some of them were pretty hard. 3 from 3. Zach Lomax only 1 from 2. Point field goal here. He missed the field goal. Half time, it was 6-4 in favour of the Panthers. And there was nothing in it, really. Let's go to the team stats and see how Parramatta lost this match, really. Let's have a look here. Completion rate, 81% to Parramatta. That's very telling because it was 86% completion rate. Nearly faultless there, the Panthers. They still had a few things in their game that they need to really fix up, but it was 50-50 possession rate at the end there. All runs meters, they ran a lot more, 300 more meters there for the Panthers. Post-contact meters, another 46 meters there for the Panthers. Line breaks 4 each. Tackle breaks 33 to 36. Parramatta looked a lot more dangerous there, but they just couldn't get over the line when they needed to. Average set distance, surprisingly, another 5 meters there to Penrith, 40 to 35. Kick return meters, 220. So they look dangerous at a lot of the time there from the kicks. The Panthers, 220 to only 113. They didn't look very good. They got stuck in their own half there, Parramatta. Not so good. The passing, 11 offloads to Parramatta. They were throwing it around. Moses had one of those, tried hard, but just things didn't go his way. And Cleary was coming off that very confident game as well in the State of Origin, but he lifted a little bit more than Moses did, I think. He definitely got involved a lot more, that's for sure. Dummy passes fairly the same. 290 total passes, a lot more for Parramatta. And kicking meters here, a little bit more from Cleary. Bombs 9-3. Parramatta maybe need to put a lot more efficient bombs against Panthers there, but they did get stuck in their own half a lot when they were trying to get back into the match. And completion rate is a problem for Parramatta. As much as you're going to throw it around, you need to also have a fairly faultless game against a side that's trying to get off the bottom of the ladder. And they have now. So how dangerous are the Panthers going to be is the question. Everyone that I know has written them off time and time again. Missed tackles here, 26 to Parramatta and 33, surprisingly, to Penrith. Ineffective tackles, 7 to Parramatta and 17 to Penrith. That's an interesting stat. Errors, 12 to Penrith and 9 to Parramatta. So Parramatta, just looking at these stats, really should have been a lot closer than losing by 8 points. Ruck infringements, 3-2 to Para. Nothing else much there to talk about. There was 2 head injury assessments there for Parramatta. Did that play into the hands of Penrith? They just turned up, and Liam Martin was so gassed at the end of that game. I heard it on radio, and then I watched the replay recently, and the extended highlights, and he was out on his feet and really sucking in the big ones. But geez, he's an absolute dog, an absolute workhorse, that guy. And I think he was one of the main reasons they did so well. But they finally put their act together, Penrith. So congratulations, Penrith there. Let's see if they can keep it going now. The next match was the last one we're going to talk about. The buys went to Bulldogs, Sharks, and Dolphins, as we know. And before we wrap it up here, let's just have a look at these stats. Mark Nawana Takawazi went over in the 4th minute. He dropped a ball that led to a try as well, as usual, but it was 5 tries to 4. So I truly believe Canberra were narrowly the better side and deserved to win at the end there. Kyo Weeks, when he made that break and then set Ethan Strange up for that last try in the 73rd minute, he is a freak of nature, Kyo Weeks there at fullback for Canberra. And a big shout out to Steve Lammy. You must be so happy. We'll have a look at the ladder before we go close shop. At half-time, it was 12-4. So Canberra were holding on to East's tether there, 12-4. And really, East could have went away a lot more there. Had a few things gone their way. I did notice, though, underfoot, it looked very wet out there. So I don't know what's happened to the drainage system. I know we had like 2 weeks of real heavy rains in Sydney, but that looked really hard to play on. And it was surprising that the ball handling was superb. But let's have a look at the ball handling and the team stats from that game. Possession, 58% to Canberra, 42% to East, to the Roosters. Time of possession, 24 minutes. Not enough, Roosters. 33 for Canberra. Completion rate, 88% for Canberra. That is a pro side going places. Very professional outfit. Only 63% completion rate for Roosters. That's what's cost them the game. That stat there. Let's have a look here. All run meters, it was a lot more to Canberra. Another 300 metres more than the 1,400 from the Roosters. 627 post-contact metres from the Canberra Raiders, 478 to the Roosters. Line breaks, 4 each. Tackle breaks, pretty much the same, 36-35 to the Roosters. Average set distance, 41 metres to the Canberra Raiders, 35 to Roosters. Kick return metres, 255 Canberra, 271 Roosters, fairly similar. Passing, actually, let's look at this. Offloads, 13 the Roosters. They did throw the ball around a lot. 8 to Canberra. The receipts, they caught the ball a lot better there. Looking at the receipts there, an extra 100 receipts of passes from Canberra Raiders there. Total passes, 259 Raiders, 211 the Roosters. Dummy passes, here we go. Interesting that the really good sides are throwing a shitload of dummy passes. And the teams that they're making gaps through or creating a gap are falling for it. 26 dummy passes from Canberra and only 4 from Roosters. That's a really interesting stat. We'll have to keep an eye on that one over the next 5 or 6 rounds and see how many of the winning sides, because don't forget, Warriors threw a shitload of dummy passes as well. And they're both close games, but that's an interesting stat. I haven't really seen that one before. 7 bombs to 8 in favour of the Roosters there. Grubbers, 9 to the Raiders and only 1 to Roosters. Very interesting stat there. Defence, effective tackles, 84%. Surprisingly to Canberra, but 90% for the Roosters. That's an interesting stat as well. Missed tackles, 36-35, narrowly there to Canberra. Ineffective tackles, 19 to Canberra, 15 to Roosters. Negative play, 8 errors there to 16 to the Roosters and 8 to Canberra. So, yeah, the errors are going to cost you, the Roosters. Ruck infringements, 2-1 to the Roosters. And that's about it. Both of the interchanges both sides had used 8 each. Now let's have a look at the ladder. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after round 13, we have Bulldogs on 22 points. First, Raiders second with 20 points, with is it a better for and against? Yeah, they're in front of the Warriors, who are also third on 20%. 20 points. Storm are fourth. I'm just looking also, they've played one more match, Raiders, so that could be in the favour of Warriors there. But Storm fourth on 18 points. And, yeah, they've had 2 buys, the Storm. That's interesting. Okay. And they're on 18 points, 2 points ahead of 5th place Sharks. And the Sharks are on 16 points. And then 1 point to 6th place Cowboys on 15. Sea Eagles round out the 7th place there on 14, 1 point behind that. And equal, but less for and against here, is Dragons on 14 as well, in the top 8. Just out of the top 8 are the Rabbitohs on 14 points, but they have played an extra match. Dolphins outside there at 10th are on 12 points. Broncos 12, and they are 11th. Roosters also on 12 points. They are 12th. West Tigers on 12 points. Crikey, how many are on 12 points? 1, 2, 3, 4. From 10th place down to 13th. West Tigers. Now, here's the danger runners. Panthers, who are running 14th, are only 1 point behind those 4 above them. 1 point, Panthers. So watch out. Could you stand Panthers winning another premiership, going for 5 in a row? I'm praying for a change. Trust me. I know you Panther fans will be pissed off with me, but that style of game, we need something new, something fresh. Anyway, the strangulation that they use on sides, we've had enough now. 4 years in a row. Okay, Knights are on only 10 points, so 1 point behind Panthers. But as I said, even 3 or 4 weeks ago, Knights, get ready for your off season. Eels on 10 points as well. They're at least playing their hearts out, a lot of those players and the young players of the Parramatta Eels. They're playing with a lot more heart than what the Knights are. And Titans are dead last, and I don't know what we're going to do there with their coach, Mr. Hasler, but they're only on 10 points as well. And so that could really, there's only between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides. There's 2 points separating them. Fathom that. From 10th down to 17th, there's 2 points separating them. So that's going to shuffle around a few more times after the last Origin. We haven't even got to the second one yet, which will be coming up soon in a couple of weeks, I'd imagine. And so join us. Thank you for joining us today. We've gone over all those stats that we need to talk about. And I'm Max Al Phillips. Please like, subscribe. At least subscribe. It's not going to cost you anything. And for me to keep this program going, Scotty's going for a few hard issues at the moment, but he's also hasn't got the time with his new job down there in the Gong, and it's very difficult. I'm trying to get Arthur have half an Arthur from the Rabbitohs to come up and do a program with us, and we're trying to get Slavko Sapevsky on here as well. Not always easy to get people here because we don't always have regular times. I've got commitments I need to do as well. But thanks very much for joining us on our review. Hopefully those stats have given you a little bit more indication of how the games sorted themselves out. And we did really good with the TAB this weekend. We missed so many three-legged parlays by that much, but I think we ended up close to $30 or $40, only with a $50 outlay there in front. And a couple of times we started off a bit scary, a bit shaky with that horrible rain-affected Gold Coast game, but we came back solid in the South and Warriors game and the Cowboys game. And our bickies were in the bank. Thank you, TAB. Thank you, punters. All right, until next time, this is Axel Phillips with Every Point's a Winner. Thanks very much for joining me. God bless. Take care and keep warm. And let's hope for some great games. Those last 3 games makes it worthwhile being a crazy NRL fan. Bye for now.